Hi Booktube, it's Amy and I'm back again reading from the Anatomy of Bibliomania by Holbrook Jackson. We're on page 258 with a section titled Reading at Mealtimes. Reading at mealtimes has innumerable precedents, and much may be said in support of it, in spite of those who would hold fast to the conviction that eating is an art in itself which tolerates no rival, or those others more medically disposed who give out that any extingent concern at table, by obtruding itself upon ingestion, which is the main object, sets up a disaffection of the inward parts and sets in dyspepsia and other gastric derangements. But their arguments are none too sound, and if true, would rule out conversation and music and all other amenities which add so much to the pleasure of dining. This parallel I would urge because it is well known that content of mind is a notable peptonizer, and it would follow that whatever is conducive to it, whether it be music, talk, books, may accompany any feast. But the dissenters need no confutation, for every reader can support me out of his own experience. Yet I shall cite a few precedents to confound the captious and console the rest. Dr. Johnson, Byron, Charles Lamb, Shelley, Leigh Hunt, and in our own day, Robert Louis Stevenson and Bernard Shaw, are all confessed table readers. In past times, it was the delight of cultured banqueters to have reading aloud numbered among the courses. At Favorinus's table, Aulus Gellius records, when he dined with friends, there was usually read either an old song or one of the lyric poets, or something from history, now in Greek and now in Latin, as on that mild day in autumn when he and Julius Celsinus were entertained very pleasantly with vegetables and fruit, and the reading at the table of the Alcestis of Laevius by Julius Paulinus. At his little place in Agro Vaticano, and our footnote is pointing us to Attic Nights in the Loeb edition, Peter Daniel Hewitt had someone to read to him at mealtimes. Neither the heat of youth, nor the multiplicity of business, nor the love of company, nor the hurry of the world has ever been able to moderate my love of study. Our own high priest of bibliophiles, Richard de Bury, every day while at table would have a book read to him, unless some special guest were present, whilst Carneades, that laborious and eternal soldier of wisdoms, even at the age of 90 years old, Quintus Valerius, Maximus relates, so addicted himself to the works of learning that when he sat down to eat, busy in his thoughts, he would forget to reach his meat, and would have starved had not Melissa, whom he kept as a wife, fed him. 'Tis with us as it was of old, with this difference, books being more easily got at, more makes them accessories to the feast. I dare boldly say that few of our later bookmen would scruple to feed at once mind and body. Most indulge thus with great content and no hurt. I could speak for myself in this case, for it has always been my habit to read during meals unless inclination bade me engage in talk, and I have no acquaintance with dyspepsia. But I must on to my instances. Trevelyan knew of no society that Macaulay would have preferred at breakfast or at dinner to the company of Sterne, Fielding, Horace Walpole, or Boswell, and there were many less distinguished authors with whose productions he was very well content to cheer his repasts. Not even a Brillat Savarin could make eating predominant over reading for Macaulay, who lived to read and read to live. All books, however, were not appropriate to any meal. Henderson's Iceland was a favorite breakfast book, but some books, which I never should dream of opening at dinner, pleased me at breakfast and vice versa. He was fastidious and a gourmet. It was voracious, walking with the heavies, breakfasting with the dull, and dined at my inn reading Cooper's Pathfinder, dining with the light. But appetite still unsatisfied, he complained that except while dressing and undressing, he got no reading at all. Charles Lamb found Milton a good supper book. If he wrote to Coleridge, If, he wrote to Coleridge, you find the Miltons in certain parts, dirtied and soiled with a crumb of right Gloucester blacked in the candle, my usual supper, or peradventure a stray ash of tobacco wafted into the crevices, look to that passage more especially, depend upon it. It contains good matter. William Hazlitt sat down to a volume of the New Eloise at the Inn of Llangollen over a bottle of sherry and a cold chicken. Leigh Hunt would read the booksellers' catalogues at tea or dinner, ticking favourite books and enjoying the pure imagination of buying them. Benjamin Disraeli read at Mealtimes, and in his old age at Hewden brought a book to the table and read for 10 minutes after every course. Campbell confesses that reading Homer for breakfast has become, by a long habit, necessary to his existence. Stevenson read Aikman's Annals at breakfast and almost forgot to drink his tea and eat his egg. But of all these instances, I admire most J.A. Symonds' relation of how he enjoyed nothing more than to sit in a bar-room among peasants, carters, and postilions, smoking with a glass of wine beside him, and a stiff work on one of the subjects he was bound to get up. Because it reminds me how I once saw Cecil Chesterton standing in the middle of a crowded London tap room with a tankard of ale in one hand and a book in the other, chuckling over the page, unconscious of the din and reek of the place. And that brings us to the end of reading at Mealtimes. And there was a time when I did enjoy, reading in a pub, reading at the bar rail at off hours. Not so much anymore. I much prefer to do my reading at home. But that's the end of that section. Our next section here will be titled Reading in Bed. And I think I'm about to go and do that right now because I'm finding my eyes quite heavy. So reading in bed will be saved for another day.